everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Katharine Ham. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. We are your morning show for any hour. Overcaffeinated and underprepared. I mean, I'm underprepared, but I have stuck to my Lent promise, so not much caffeine. At any rate, there's a lot of news going on. We're going to talk about tariffs. We're going to talk about a little signal update, such that it is. Greenland. News coming out of Greenland, and still Columbia University mired in its idiocy. So we'll get to all of that. But first, how's it going, Vic?
Hello, Mary Katharine, and I can't wait to talk about term number 3 and 4 of the Trump administration. We'll talk to that in a second. As listeners can hear, I'm getting a little raspy. I'm nearing Willem Dafoe voice, which is I'm kind of a scientist myself. So please bear with me, and Mary Katharine will do, I think, a lot of the burden of this episode. But
you're gonna be like, so what's different? That chick never shuts up.
It's been very helpful to me at times. So fighting off this, but it's a combination of fighting off kind of a really nasty cold, and now we're in allergy season. So sometimes I can actually tell if I'm blowing my nose. Is this the cold or the allergy?
Which one is it?
Yeah, I can tell, and it's the blossoms are out. I can see them out my window, and so it's a gorgeous day, and yet it's a terrible day. So that's the story of my life. I do want to say I was recuperating over the weekend, and people have been telling me you got to watch the latest season of White Lotus, but no, didn't get to that, and instead I watched a rerun of one of the great '80s movies of all time, Tootsie.
Oh, fun stuff.
Starring Dustin Hoffman, directed by Sidney Pollack. And I have to say several things. One, it's such a stellar cast, beginning with, of course, Dustin Hoffman. If you haven't seen it, he can't get a job. He is a struggling actor, so he comes up with the idea of becoming an actress by dressing up and pretending to be a woman, and in the process understanding the struggles of women in the 80s.
And probably by being hit on constantly. Once you see Dustin Hoffman in the dress.
As a woman.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's kind of played for laughs. And when it's not, Sidney Pollack also plays his agent, and he's talking to him about needing to get mental help because of him pretending to be a woman. And his roommate, his apartment mate, is Bill Maher. And he too is like, well, how do you get out of this jam now that you became a successful actress? He says, there's got to be a morals clause, but I'm pretty sure you violated all those already, And so there's this constant thing that it wouldn't be played like that today, I think,
No, truly a movie for the vibe shift.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it would be. And here's the other thing, his girlfriend is played by Terry Garth, and he's kind of a jerk to her. And he's also in love with his fellow actress on the soap opera, played by Jessica Lange. And so Jessica Lange, of course, is getting lesbian vibes from. So it's a great thing. And then she takes him to meet her father because she wants to pair them up. And the father's played by Charles Durning. And Tootsie's also getting hit on by the great actor George Gaines. Yeah. And Gina Davis is in this movie. It's such a terrific.
I do like
Charles, yeah.
Every 80s movie too, there's just like a generous helping of casual sexual harassment in every single 80s movie.
Yeah, and and then the worst, the villain, if you will, of this show is played by the director, played by Dabney Coleman.
Of course.
He's fantastic.
I love Dabney Coleman.
He's so good, even when he's bad. So that's my first observation, and then observation number 2, she's totally a dude, and I don't understand how they couldn't tell.
Yeah.
Like, you look at someone, you're like,
it's Dustin Hoffman.
That's
come
right.
on.
I mean, I know it's not a tall woman, but it's
that's true.
Dustin Hoffman nonetheless. Mary Katharine, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Speaking of prestige TV, I have been watching White Lotus, which is pretty decent. Also, then I took it upon myself to watch Adolescence, which is this true crime Netflix show, which is
I saw you tweeting about this. Is this a drama or is this a documentary?
Yes, it's a true crime drama, but it's based on it's an amalgamation of several crimes. And it's like teen stuff. It's pretty dark. I found it well acted and executed and deeply unsatisfying. So if you guys are thinking of tuning in, it's like watching an extremely well-crafted 1/7 of a Law and Order episode.
Okay, wait a minute. Your definition of deeply unsatisfying might not be my definition of deeply unsatisfying.
No, it's a crime drama where there's no mystery and no trial and no comeuppance and no delving into characters more than the first several days of a murder investigation. So
slow burn.
Not just a slow burn, but a slow burn out. Where you experience a bunch of emotions, but you don't get any conclusions. You don't get an arc. You don't. Anyway, but very well acted. It was certainly affecting. Just like, bleh. Anyway, okay, that's my take on that. Also, I saw a clip this week of Chapel Roan on Call Her Daddy where she says, I don't know anyone with kids who's happy, who has light in their eyes, who's enjoying themselves. And I'm not here to flame her about it. She may have a bunch of very close friends who are in the thick of having toddlers or young children, are adjusting, are having a rough time, not getting sleep. All that stuff is legit. And they may be sharing that with her, and perhaps she's just seeing that one part. I also think people drive themselves crazy by overthinking parenthood a little bit.
Yes.
Not a little bit, a lot.
Yeah.
And just in the last week, I took my 2 toddlers to Mount Vernon, George Washington's house. And I live close to it, so it's easy. But
also, you're like a charter member now, aren't you?
I do belong now because it's basically like our little outing because it's close to the house. It's good for kids of all ages.
Yeah.
And so I took them over there. I only took them over there for an hour, right? Set your sights like you're not being super ambitious with toddlers. The ambition was, however, no stroller, 1 spare diaper, 1 potty training kid in underwear, 1 snack. Let's see how it goes. It's like a competition show, but just with me and my own stupidity. And I gotta say,
you could always blame the goat.
I gotta say, it went beautifully. We had a wonderful time.
Wow.
I didn't take a stroller because I feel like the 2-year-old is very capable of walking. Of course, the 3.5-year-old is, but they get a little dependent on mom if mom is there.
Yes.
And dragging them around. And so in this case, I just wanted to be like, no, we're going to hold hands and we're going to walk and we're going to get a little exercise. And they did a great job.
Great.
You do have to train them for this so that you can get them out for other outings in the future. And then I took all 4 kids to the zoo this weekend. And well, I got to say, though, I did not strategize the zoo properly for this reason. The key at the zoo in DC, which is a lovely zoo.
I used to live next to it.
It's built on a hill. Oh, actually, we walked past your old house and the girls saw your building and were like, that is beautiful. Who lives there?
Yeah, yes. It's an Art Deco building from the 1930s, the Kennedy Ward. It looks like the building from Ghostbusters.
They found it very impressive and they found it spontaneously and they found it impressive that you lived there when I told them that.
I couldn't live there now. When I lived there, it was $850 for a 900 square foot, I think, studio.
Wow.
Plus kitchenette.
So I took them to the zoo, and here's the issue with the zoo. The zoo is built on a hill. And here's what you should do that I did not do. Park at the bottom, walk up, finish coming downhill.
And then double back.
I didn't do that. I went from the top down. And I had a lovely time with the children. They saw elephant trunks. They were very excited about that. They saw flamingos. Very excited about that. We did not make it to monkeys or
that's the best one.
Or pandas, because obviously the panda line is crazy long. And
I'm going to say pandas overrated.
Oh, pandas aren't that interesting. So I was like, I'll tell them something else is a panda. So we did see some wolves. That was a special request.
Yeah.
And everything went very well. The only problem with the zoo is the COVID hangover that the zoo has, which requires you to get into a free zoo. It's not really free because your tax dollars pay for it. But you know what I'm saying? I didn't want to offend. I don't want to offend Milton Friedman, so it's not a free zoo. But just for the purposes of this conversation, you have to book a QR code reservation.
Ridiculous.
To go into the free zoo.
Yeah.
And none of the scanners work. So when you're coming through, there's a big backup of people trying to get into the free zoo, which you could just walk into it before. And they're scanning, whatever. It sucks. It doesn't work. A huge line. You finally get in, whatever. And then I was reading as we were leaving, there's a sign that says, if you want to leave the free zoo and re-enter the free zoo, you have to stand in another line at the Welcome Center, get a stamp on your hand so you can walk back into the free zoo. Like, what are we doing?
No, I made a couple of years ago, took the family to the zoo. In fact, we did the same thing because we had some time to kill, and was totally not expecting that I had to get my phone out and then register because, again, back in the day, I could jog in the morning and just go into the zoo.
Yep.
It's so ridiculous.
You know what it is at this point? It's a work program and a email collection scam. That's what it is.
That's right.
Because they realized they could get all this data on everybody. And so no more. You got to stand in the line. And that line, we got there early. That line was so deep by the time we exited.
Because people can't just flow in anymore. They just have to just. Now, did you see any of the orangutans or the chimps using the cables outside?
No, I was hoping to, but we didn't see any.
That's pretty exciting.
At one point, I thought about showing them the sculpture of the orangutan that's hanging from the apes building and be like, "Look, kids." But I didn't do that. I didn't do that because no fake news. No fake
news now.
But we very much enjoyed ourselves, and on neither of those outings did we have a bathroom accident. However, there was a hazmat incident when we got back to the house, but that's another story, and I'm not going to tell it. So the point is, we're having fun, and we're having hard times, but it's okay. We made it through. And I am protected because I've been on my allergy medicine regimen for about 2 weeks now before the blooms come fully out. So
yes, good for you. No, I would say the apes are fascinating, although the smell inside the ape house is pretty strong, but they're very fascinating. Just, and terrifying because we all know now what they can do.
Yes.
I'm not even forget about the silverbacks. I'm just talking about chimps.
Just chimps.
I mean, it's really scary.
I've seen that chimp movie.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
That I can't think of the name of.
No, neither can I. Also, giraffes are interesting. And I'll tell you what's interesting about the giraffes. If you go inside or if you're just really close to them, they're deposits, shall we say? They're basically Rolos.
I like this comparison. By the way, I did not see the giraffes or the cheetahs, which is my favorite animal, because the African section is under renovation, which I'd just like to say, during the Trump administration, I don't think that's a coincidence. At any rate, I didn't get to see those. Okay, we should get on to the news, but that was sort of the news because that Chapel Roan clip is very
everyone's talking about, and it's very viral. Sad. It's sad, and it's you need to meet other people out there. Who obviously are chiming in now on social media to say, hey, actually, we have kids and we love it.
It's funny because I think a lot of people without kids, or especially on somewhere unhealthy like social media, think that it's like cope or something to say that you have fun with your kids. It's really not. It's just, I enjoy them. They're fun. We had a good time. It is like hard work because I had to drag 2 babies. I did take a wagon that time, and I dragged the 2 babies back up the hill to get to the car. Didn't get a ticket though. Look at me. Okay. Good. Winning. All righty. Shall we talk about what's going on in the politics?
Let's do it.
So, over the weekend, Trump referred to the possibility of a third term by saying, "I'm not joking. I basically tell people who," he says, a lot of people ask him about it. "I basically tell them we have a long way to go. It's very early in the administration. I'm focused on the current." When pressed about how this would happen, he said, "There are methods which you could do it." There are not. There are not methods.
We have our ways. When he says there are methods, it's like we have our ways.
There are not methods. This is very dumb.
Okay.
Because it's not going to happen. And talking about it is just the exact kind of thing that makes people freak out about him, which to some extent benefits him, but also is just like unhealthy because what are you, FDR? Like FDR thought he was better than George Washington. You're not better than George Washington. Just chill. We got 2 terms.
So there was an interesting piece in the Wall Street Journal about, all the presidential paintings in the Oval Office. And they're like, and the one portrait that explains it all and Trump's reasoning for everything. And it was about James K. Polk, and sort of this sort of expansionist president. But what goes unmentioned, if you look at that picture, there's a huge framed portrait among Andrew Jackson and James K. Polk of Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yeah.
There you go. Now,
I mean, look, Trump is basically a late 80s, early 90s Democrat in so many ways.
Yeah.
And that party definitely idolized FDR. It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So, and he could do it biologically speaking, if that's the term, because, his father
longevity
Fred
speaking.
made it to 93.
Yeah.
And
don't scare the people. You're scaring the people, Vic.
He'll run in, not only forget about 2028, he'll run again in 2032. So the line here's when he says that there are methods, it's the line in the 22nd Amendment, which is, quote, no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice. And certain people, including a Republican congressman from Tennessee, Andy Ogles, said, well, it doesn't say non-consecutive. So, maybe if we change
two is two.
The language.
Two is two.
So you would think.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's one way they would try to maybe enter an amendment to the amendment. But if they do that, as you know, it's 2/3 to just bring up the proposal, to propose it.
Right.
And then another 2/3 again to ratify it. Or 3/4, in fact.
Yeah. Like, I think the suggestion from a member of Congress is to kiss up to Trump. And it's just like unproductive. James K. Polk, by the way, a one-term president. So
now, have you heard the other theory, though? Which is Vance will run in 2028 and his vice president would be Trump. Because he can't be elected twice as president, not as vice president. But then that would conflict with the 12th Amendment, which says that he can't be put in a position to become president. But that's all things that we can work our way through the courts. Am I scaring you with this?
I look forward to it, I guess. Yeah. Doesn't anyone just want to retire and enjoy it? Anyone?
I want to retire now.
Anyone?
The idea of being in my 80s and wanting
if you owned a bunch of golf courses and like you could just go golf at any of them all the time,
I would take one golf course. I would do like a 9-hole and I'd just repeat it.
It's very low maintenance of you.
Yeah, thank you.
To have just one golf course.
That's all I want.
Yeah. Anyway, he's flapping his gums about that. The other thing going on this week is the tariffs.
Yes. Don't check your stocks, by the way.
Seemingly for my birthday week. New tariffs imposed. This was last week. President Donald Trump announced he would impose a 25% tariff on all imported cars starting April 3rd and car parts starting May 3rd. Half of the cars sold in the United States are imported. This is Reason Magazine reporting. And every car built in the U.S. last year contained foreign-made parts. The industry average is about 60%. This caused a lot of things to happen with the market and with, frankly, car dealerships around here, where I heard that the Hyundai dealership this weekend was on fire with people trying to get in there and make deals before this happens.
Not on fire in the Tesla dealership sense.
No, not in that sense. No. But yeah, look, there are brands that people think of as foreign are actually largely made and assembled here.
Yeah, that's right.
And then there are parts to every car that come from other places that will face tariffs. So that the piecing together of these things in American factories will be affected by this. Caroline Leavitt and the White House are calling it Liberation Day this week. The president will be announcing a tariff plan that will roll back the unfair trade practices that have been ripping off our country for decades. Products are made with foreign hands instead of American hands. That is going to end on Wednesday. But they do kind of want to have it all ways here because you're also supposed to make money from the tariffs toward the federal coffers. And how do you do that if things stop being foreign made? You won't make that money from the tariffs. I just think he's a true believer in tariffs.
Yeah, and this wasn't a tool for some greater. No, it was an end to itself. The tariffs. No,
but he's playing with fire, politically speaking.
Yes,
and I just disagree with him economically on this entirely, and I think most economists do. This will end up being a tax on American people. It will be on a good that they appreciate and can see very clearly is more expensive. Man, the extent to which cars have gotten out of reach and even used cars become so incredibly expensive over the past 20, 25 years has been crazy. And this will contribute to that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think about my own car. I have a Subaru. Mm-hmm. It's made in Indiana. But again, those parts are coming from, all sorts of places. And you're going to have these implications as a result of having these tariffs. Again, as you mentioned, if it becomes too expensive, sure, there are going to be people who are going to be paying more. So that means a certain chunk of that in taxes go to the government.
Yeah.
But you're going to have a lot less people actually wanting it. If you have a used car, the price for your used car is going to go up. So that's good news for that. But I mean, for everybody else, I mean, the market is closing now. I think it's closing out the worst quarter in 3 years. So all these gains are being erased. Trump doesn't want you to notice that. He never cared about it, except for he did, but now he doesn't. And he talks about, not really caring about this pain because it's short term. He just, again, better hope that short is before the next midterm election. We're already having special elections coming up that are a problem for him and in the House. So he's got to worry about that. And you could see where everyone is going in the market because of these policies. Gold is big right now. Everybody's fleeing to gold, not everybody, but that's the big thing now, bigger than ever.
A Cox automotive economist told the New York Times that 25% tariffs on cars and car parts would add an estimated $3,000 to the cost of cars built in the United States, with higher price hikes likely for foreign-made cars. He estimated that American factories will produce about 30% fewer cars as a result of the tariffs, and the industry is prepared for disruption to virtually all North American vehicle production. Disruption's going to be pain. And like you said, he argues that there will be a long-term gain from this. And look, he's a very rich man who's nonetheless pretty good at connecting with people about what their general problems with the economy are. But if you tell people short-term pain is fine, and they're not through that tunnel pretty quickly, you start sounding very much like the Biden administration when it said that the price of your groceries didn't matter and it was all in your head and everything's fine. So you got to be very careful of that. Reason notes the last time the U.S. engaged in widespread auto protectionism was in the late 1980s when the Reagan administration imposed import quotas on Japanese cars. The results were higher prices for cars made in Japan, but also higher prices for cars made in America and Europe. Facing less competition, car makers simply started charging more. That means the $100 billion tax increase will likely not be the only cost incurred by these tariffs. Look, obviously Reason is very pro-free trade and others in the Trump coalition are not. I understand that he was elected with this in mind and people knew that this was part of the package. And if it hurts them, he will pay for it.
Right. Because again, when are they going to actually get the tangible results or the benefits from this particular policy? Certainly not in the immediate future if they cannot afford a car.
Yes. Yeah. And it distorts all sorts of other things. All the tariff
market distortions we talk, but this is you and I are free traders.
Indeed. And this is one of the things that, from 2015, since he came down the escalator on, I have not agreed with and think that it will go poorly. I'm okay with him occasionally doing these negotiations using tariffs as a technique. And I understood that this was not the only thing he liked to use them for, but I was like, oh, let's cross our fingers and see what happens here. And look, a lot of people are going to be like, the true believers are going to be like, this is what the world deserves for jerking us around.
Right.
But what does it look like in the economy?
Well, and the other thing is, certain cars, namely from Korea, are very popular in the United States.
Yeah.
Hyundai, Kias. And Korea has a very firm policy in mind that they want their cars to be, number one, around the world. And that's coming into now conflict. They don't want to back down from this. Right. And as a result, you're going to have these tariffs being slapped on. And people in this country want to drive their Hyundai. Give me a Hyundai here. Help me out here. A Hyundai Sonata. No, that's nobody drives a Hyundai Sonata anymore.
I drove a Hyundai Santa Fe at one point.
Oh, is it that Hyundai Santa Fe?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or there's a Tucson.
Tucson,
very
right,
Arizona themed, very American West themed.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. So
anyway, so we will keep you posted on that. Also, Trump is apparently going to meet with Bill Maher for dinner. Have you seen this?
Do we have a date for that?
I don't think we have a date for it, but he had some stuff to say about how this happened. This is a truth post. Okay. I got a call from a very good guy and friend of mine, Kid Rock, asking me whether or not it would be possible for me to meet in the White House with Bill Maher, a man who has been unjustifiably critical of anything or anyone Trump. I really didn't like the idea much, and I don't like it much now, but thought it would be interesting. The problem is, no matter how much he likes your favorite president, me, He will publicly proclaim what a terrible guy I am, etc., very much like the Democrats at my recent address to the joint session of Congress, where I stated correctly that no matter what I said or did, they wouldn't stand, they wouldn't applaud, they wouldn't smile or laugh, and certainly they wouldn't be in any way nice. Then he goes on to say, who knows though, maybe I'll be proven wrong. In any event, I'm doing a favor for a friend. I look forward to meeting with Bill Maher, Kid Rock, and I believe even the legendary Dana White will be present. It might be fun, or it might not, but you will be the first to know.
So you're saying this is going to be like a table for four?
This is the post I want to write about every meeting I convene.
Yes.
Like I'll be like, I'm going to the Palm to meet with whoever the birthday guest is, to meet with Vic Mattis. I'm doing this for my friend.
Otherwise, I don't expect a good time.
I didn't like the idea. I don't like it much now. But I'm going to have a few drinks and see what happens. And in the end, maybe we'll have a good time or not.
Well, Mary Katharine, I think that's the problem right there, because somebody at that table does not smoke or drink.
Yeah.
So we will see. I don't know. So I don't know when or how long this, the president's busy. These things aren't going to be, long drawn out affairs, I don't think. But I did see Maher talking about it on his after show.
Mm-hmm.
And the person he was with, it was very funny because he was asked, what's he going to wear? Right. And Maher says, well, I can guarantee you, I'm not going to show up like Zelensky. I think the guest he had on said, yeah, you're not going to show up, wearing Lululemon is what he called what Zelensky was wearing.
It did look like Man Lulu. It did look like
Man Lulu, which is expensive.
And Man Lulu is very nice stuff. I'm not knocking it.
No, so what Maher said is that he claims that he's going to wear a suit that was given to him by Jordan Peterson. So that sort of, those are levels. But what he said is, and this is an actual quote.
Jordan Peterson wears some very interesting suits. So
brace yourself. But what he said is, quote, it's a sign. This is Maher. Mm-hmm. He says it's a sign of respect. It's the White House. Mm-hmm. Interesting. So we'll have an interesting conversation. I mean, there are things they're going to talk about that they're going to get along with great, especially all the woke DEI stuff. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other stuff, and it's going to be who knows.
Well, I think Maher, look, he wears a suit for his show every time he's on. He's not a big dresser downer when it comes to that. I think he has a bit more of an old school feel about how these things should work. I like Maher because he's not predictable. I do not know exactly where he is on every issue.
You never do.
And I think that actually Trump is similar, right? He's not Maher is much more identified himself as a man of the left and yet breaks with them on some things. And I think Trump was never really a man of the left, but was like a populist Democrat of the 80s, 90s.
Right.
So in that way, are we sure that Trump didn't appear on Politically Incorrect at some point? That would have been the heyday of that kind of conversation.
No, he would have been a perfect guest for that, yeah.
Yes, and maybe had a conversation about trade and tariffs. Who knows? I should look that up. But I think that this is the kind of thing that Democrats should have done with Trump starting in 2016 and 17.
No, rather than go full on resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you know what my big question about this meeting is?
What's that?
What are they going to eat?
I don't know. Are there any dietary restrictions on that table?
You know what? Bill Maher is a weird health nut guy now. So
he's a little healthy. And actually, Dana White is probably pretty healthy too, because he looks like he's on a health kick lately. And he might be doing something crazy like hard 75. And then what are you going to serve at that table?
Okay.
Who knows?
Well, Trump looks like he's on a health kick too.
Always. His health is perfect.
He might get the filet of fish, the fish delight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway. So all of them will get together at some point. So we shall see.
Yes, a meeting of the minds.
What's going on in Greenland?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So there have been several. There was a trip to Greenland where I believe Vice President Vance and the Second Lady visited Greenland. Vance visited a military base there. Yes. By the way, my father served in Greenland. Have I ever said that?
No kidding.
Yeah.
No.
Yep. Thule, Greenland. Yep.
Okay.
He served there to this day, I believe, although I haven't checked recently.
Is that where Vance was, by the way, the same base?
I'm not sure. But Thule, Greenland is where my dad served, and he was very young. But to this day, or at least when I was a kid, he slept with a pillow over his head, which always made me nervous as a child because I was like, can you breathe under there? And he did that because of the land of the midnight sun where he was living.
Half the year.
Yeah. He had to shut those lights out. So yeah, he has a big parka. A government issue parka.
By the way, I knew that the U.S., like people like your father, I knew that the Army had a presence in Greenland since I was a little kid.
Well, he was actually Air Force, but yes.
Air Force, okay. Yeah. And how did I know that the U.S. had a military presence there as a little kid?
How?
Because it was a subplot in Happy Days. And towards the end, when the series was dying and Richie left because, eventually you got to graduate from high school, Richie and Ralph Balfe were supposedly posted to Greenland. That was where they went. So I was like, oh, this is okay.
There you go.
That's what's going on in Greenland. When Trump first mentioned this, much like mentioning Canada as a 51st state and wanting to run for a third term, I thought, oh, he's just trolling. He's funny, making his jokes. And then at a White House press conference, Caroline Leavitt was asked, and she, straight faced was like, yeah. And then all of a sudden, JD Vance is there and he gives a speech, and the speech is it's a full on, they're giving it the hard sell, but I think he might be coming off too hard to the Greenlanders. What do you think?
Yeah, the Danish foreign minister, Lars Rasmussen, pushed back. Well, I will say, let me say,
I was gonna make a joke about how shocked I am that there is a Dane named Lars Rasmussen. He's just like John Smith. Okay.
Yeah, so he pushed back on the trip and the messaging. Vance, I will say, is asked about it at one point, and a lot of the headlines on X were like, "Oh, he said we can't ignore the president's desires," right? That was the big headline. But I listened to the full answer, which actually we can listen to now.
Okay.
Well, the president said we have to have Greenland, and I think that we do have to be more serious about the security of Greenland. We can't just ignore this place. We can't just ignore the president's desires, but most importantly, we can't ignore what I said earlier, which is the Russian and Chinese encroachment in Greenland. We have to do more. Now, what the president said in his State of the Union address, and he was very clear about this, is we respect the self-determination of the people of Greenland, but my argument again to them is I think that you'd be a lot better coming under the United States security umbrella than you have been under Denmark's security umbrella. Because what Denmark's security umbrella has meant is effectively they've passed it all off to brave Americans and hoped that we would pick up the tab. We're simply saying to the people of Greenland, when the president says we've got to have Greenland, he's saying this island is not safe. A lot of people are interested in it. A lot of people are making a play. We know that America cares about the security of this island for the sake of the people of Greenland, but also for the sake of the national security interests of the United States of America. So our message is very simple. Yes, the people of Greenland are going to have self-determination. We hope that they choose to partner with the United States because we're the only nation on earth that will respect their sovereignty and respect their security, because their security is very much our security, as these brave Americans show.
So you can hear that it's quite a bit more complex than just that, and is somewhat about a security argument, although I think they are being bellicose and a bit trolly on this, frankly. The Danish foreign minister had this to say. He's expressed his dissatisfaction over the tone of U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance's comments that Copenhagen had not done enough for Greenland. We are open to criticisms, but let me be completely honest. We do not appreciate the tone in which it is being delivered. This is not how you speak to your close allies, and I still consider Denmark and the United States to be close allies. Yeah, he was actually at the space base, the U.S. military space base.
Yes, that's right.
On Friday. So anyway.
Okay. Look, it's part of, again, people talk about the Trump administration after this whole Signal thing, and we could talk about Signal later, just a quick update. But that Trump administration, obviously they're not neocons, but they're basically neo-isolationists. But really, when it comes down to it, there's kind of a neo-imperial streak going on here, because there is a sphere of influence that Trump is right. There is a big battle over the Arctic and the Arctic Circle. And, the countries that want a piece of the action are primarily are our adversaries. So it's Russia and it's China. And so the U.S. should rightly be concerned, and the Europeans should be concerned about who controls that. And then Greenland is right up there, and it's being affected by this. And, Chinese are making a play.
Right.
So I get it.
It's a strategic location. Yeah. By the way, it has a new name. That is Thule Air Base.
Okay.
It is now called Pituffik Base. I don't know how you pronounce it.
But I saw the name too, and I was wondering. But that's basically where your father was then.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So how does this? What do they do next? A referendum?
Well, I don't know. I mean, look, I think it's right that it's a strategic place, and that what you would get better strategery by doing better strategery with honey instead of vinegar, is what I think.
Yeah.
Now, often I have been proved wrong by Trump's political instincts. And yet I do think that this and the Canada thing, what you end up doing is making people angry to the point that, for instance, the conservative alternative in Canada now was ahead by double digits and is now basically even with
Pierre
Trudeau's
Poilievre.
Pierre Poilievre with Trudeau's Liberal Party, which will not be represented by Trudeau. But you sort of bailed him out, and in Greenland you might get similarly like bad political outcomes for people who might otherwise be aligned with you.
No, I mean, I think we should fully expect this as a possibility of a consequence that, in the next 4 years, you're going to have these things happen where they backfire, whether it be Greenland, whether it be Canada, sticking with their Carney, who is their current leader. That could be a problem. And then there'll be, what'll happen after that, Mary Katharine, is somebody else will be blamed.
Yeah,
So,
of course.
I mean, it's not going to be him. I mean, it's the same thing with Georgia. After Trump lost in 2020, that he basically encouraged voters to stay home in the special elections.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on,
two blue Senate seats.
Yeah.
So
Ossoff and Warnock, two real gems we got there. So
yeah. So up next we have another place that maybe we should take over by force. Columbia University. Just kidding.
Yes.
New news from there. The interim president of Columbia University abruptly left her post Friday evening of last week as the school confronted the loss of hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding and the Trump administration's mounting skepticism about its leadership. This is the New York Times reporting. The move came 1 week after Columbia bowed to a series of demands from the federal government, which had canceled approximately $400 million in essential federal funding, and it made way for Columbia's third leader since August. Claire Shipman, who had been the co-chair of the university's board of trustees, was named the acting president and replaced Dr. Katrina Armstrong. Woo, baby. What a mess over there.
I'm reminded of the Herman and the Hermits had a classic song from the 60s, Henry VIII, I Am.
Yes, I know that.
And the line, second verse, same as the first. So now we're up to president number 3.
Whew.
I don't think there's no changes are going to be made. And just because somebody's pointing out, Claire Shipman, she once attended an APAC meeting. That's really not going to do it.
No.
But at the same time, you're never going to appease these Columbia protesters. They just had a big stunt, where they were all in front there tearing their diplomas. And if you look at them when they're tearing their Columbia diplomas, they all look deranged.
Yeah.
They just do. So there's that. And Claire Shipman, who is former CNN, is that where she was from, Mary Katharine?
Oh, good Lord. Really?
Yeah.
She's a journalist.
Yeah, she was. Claire Shipman was married to Jay Carney.
That's right.
Former Time Magazine and Obama's press secretary.
ABC's Good Morning America.
ABC's Good Morning America as well. And Jay Carney was Obama's White House press secretary. John Gizzi from Human Events.
Yes.
He's covered many White Houses since like Larry Speaks in the 1980s under Reagan. He says that he's enjoyed a good relationship with all those White House press secretaries, Republican and Democrat, with one exception, Jay Carney.
Really?
He said, not really a nice guy. In any event, the Free Beacon ran a story pointing out Claire Shipman's relationship with Carney. And unfortunately, we had to make a slight correction.
Mm-hmm.
They're no longer married.
Oh, yeah. Also, just like an interesting career path. Far be it from me to suggest that longtime journalists are not qualified for such positions, but no managerial experience before you get to head of a giant not giant university, but like a real Rubik's Cube of management situations that you have to figure out when you take the helm of this university. By the way, can we just why are we doing negotiations with Columbia University? Just take their money away. Because you can't do negotiations without getting into First Amendment issues. This is why they shouldn't give money to them in the first place, because you've given the money, and then if you take it based on content-based concerns, then that can be a problem. Don't give them money. Just yank it all. They've got billions of dollars in endowment.
The other thing is, you just mentioned taking over this job. without really the experience of managing she's on the board. She's been on the board for some time, so there's some experience in that respect. But I would say it's probably a far cry. This is why people in the military are oftentimes sought after for corporate jobs, because they have organizational structures in their minds and they know how to run things. And I think about, we've gone from Manouche Shafik to Katrina Armstrong to Claire Shipman as presidents of Columbia University. It's a far cry from an older president of Columbia by the name of Dwight Eisenhower.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So just put that in perspective. What would Ike do in this situation?
What would Ike
Especially
do?
if he saw student protesters storming buildings and preventing Jewish students from entering classrooms and pushing for an end to Israel? What would Dwight Eisenhower do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What is even happening with these people? All right. Do we have anything else on our plates today?
There's a quick thing. We didn't mention this on the show, but former vice presidential candidate Tim Walz recently did an interview where
I'm sure it was great.
Yes, where he called himself basically a knucklehead again, and said that he's not going to criticize the campaign, but Kamala Harris wasn't bold enough, is what he said, that she should have been bolder.
None of these postmortems seem to be really grasping what happened there. Oh, speaking of postmortems, the Signal story is done. And
yes, that's right.
Caroline Leavitt again was out in front of the White House saying, like, we've put this matter to rest. He's still Walz is still in this position. He's trusted by the president. That's all well and good. How are we fixing it?
By doing nothing.
Well,
again, distractions. Okay. I had in my brain fogginess, the words that Tim Walz used in the interview is, I can be something of a train wreck, he said in this recent interview.
Oh gosh.
So that's it. As for Signal, we had said on the previous show, well, if they're going hard on the full-on denial, right? Like, so much so that it was like Walz or Hegseth, I think it was Walz who had fully denied he does not know Jeffrey Goldberg. So he doesn't know how he got onto this Signal chain. He did it enough times, I believe the cock crowed after 3 times denying it. Thank you. Anyway, so sure enough, we asked this on the last episode. Jeffrey Goldberg came back over the weekend and said, that's not true. We do know each other.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So what are they going to do about it? And some people apparently internally are saying, they don't like Walz's imperious nature. I think it's more about his foreign policy view versus JD's. We've had this discussion in the past, because obviously JD was like, why don't we let the Europeans fix it? They can take the Houthis. They don't have much of a military to do this, but nevertheless. And so that's what's going on. But maybe they all stay and nothing changes.
By what method are you changing this so that it doesn't happen again?
I'll tell you how. The first thing we're going to do is, oh my gosh, we're attacking Iran. Sorry, we'll get back to you on this.
Is that on your Signal chat? God, when's somebody going to add me?
That is, okay.
All righty.
Anything else?
I think we're good for today.
Okay, good. Listeners, don't even bother tweeting me about my voice. I understand this. I'm dying here. I bet, but just content you want, I'm delivering for you after this.
You have endured valiantly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sure our producer Phil can tell you how many times I hit the mute button. So I'm just hacking up a lung here. I don't know if we're on video, because we wouldn't want to see that. Okay. That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorino Mattis. Mary Katharine, I just realized who I sound like with this voice. I now sound like Nina Blackwood, the former MTV VJ on the 80s station on
That's
Sirius
a good one.
XM.
That's a good one.
Coming up next, Journey.
I'm glad those guys are still getting work. At MK Hammer on X, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube or Instagram. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.